Man, I really didn't think that the Columbus Blue Jackets were going to be the first team I did one of these for, but with the firing of head coach Dean Avison today, it's pretty clear that the last place in the Eastern Conference Blue Jackets are not going to be turning things around, especially because the guy that they hired to replace Avison is 70-year-old Rick Bowness. And all due respect to Bones, a 70-year-old who has only been out of the playoffs once since leaving Winnipeg, and that was in a COVID season, doesn't really seem like a prime candidate to give this team a bounce back, especially when the East is so goddamn loaded. Those are all future problems. Today, we are going to discuss the past and what exactly went wrong for the Columbus Blue Jackets, who came into this season with a little bit of optimism, with a young core that had almost made a push for the playoffs last season and seemed like they could be on the verge of taking the next step forward. Instead, it was another step backwards as some of the basement dwellers in the Metro Division lapped Columbus and left the Blue Jackets in the dust, wondering where things went wrong. And we have to start with, of course, the guy who got fired this year, Dean Avison. Avison became the bench boss for Columbus back in 2024 as one of the big first moves by a new regime headed by Don Waddell, and unsurprisingly was seen as a bit more old school and behind the times, and nothing that Avison has done in his year and a half since taking the job has done anything to dissuade that. But having a plethora of young prospects and picks, the Blue Jackets never really developed that young core that they were hoping to build, especially around guys like Adam Fantilli, Denton Mateychuk, Cole Sillinger, and Kent Johnson. Basically, none of those guys, other than Fantilli, have been given prominent roles on the Columbus Blue Jackets this year. Kent Johnson, in particular, has basically been relegated to bottom six duty, which is why that core has kind of fizzled out so far, and why I'm really curious why they decided to go with Rick Bowness to kind of re-energize that core. I know he's good at developing defensemen, so Mateychuk will probably get a boost from him, but you really need to get guys like Sillinger and Johnson clicking because that Columbus forward core is very, very depleted of talent. Second big issue that has plagued the Columbus Blue Jackets all year is leads. They're not very good at holding on to them, especially in the third period. They're tied with the Maple Leafs and the Jets when it comes to having the worst record in the NHL when leading after the second period, and they have given up the most goals of any team in the third period this year while scoring the second fewest. And that's really bad because when you have a roster that's full of holes like the Blue Jackets do, you can't be affording to give away games when you're leading. One reason that's definitely hurting that cause is the Columbus Blue Jackets penalty kill, which is the fourth worst in the entire NHL, which is not what you would expect for a team that is so solid defensively with guys back there like Werenski, Mateychuk, and Severson, to name a few, as well as some pretty good defensive forwards like Boone Jenner, Harley Coyle, and Matthew Olivier, but the Jackets penalty kill has just been atrocious this year. Their defensive structure has been pretty predictable and easy to beat by other teams, and unfortunately, as great as Jet Greaves has been this year, and he has backstopped them to quite a few wins that they probably didn't deserve, just wasn't enough to stop the bleeding on the PK, which is part of the reason Steve McCarthy, their assistant coach, was also let go probably. But really, Columbus's issue is the same thing that's kind of been dooming them for the last few years, and that's the lack of high-end point-producing forwards. Right now, defenseman Zach Werenski is leading the team in points, and he's the only player who is a point-a-game player on Columbus this season. And while he's incredibly talented and deserving of being in Norris consideration once again, it's not great when you're a team relying on points from the back end. In fact, two other defensemen, Mateychuk and Provorov, round out the Columbus Blue Jackets' top 10 in scoring this year, which is indicative not only of the lack of high-end scoring talent they have in their forward core, but also the lack of depth. As it stands right now, they're probably only going to end up with 3 forwards who score at least 20 goals this year, those being Marchenko, Voronkov, and Fantilli. Maybe Miles Wood, if he picks things up, can hit 20. That's just not going to be enough to get them back close to the playoff picture this year, and a large microscope is going to start to be focused on forward Adam Fantilli. His development has stalled out, as he's probably going to struggle to hit 60 points this season after putting up only 54 last year. And that's going to be magnified because the guys that he was drafted around and expected to be in the same class as, Macklin Celebrini and Leo Carlsson, are putting up monster numbers in their sophomore years, and other guys taken in the top 10 are also probably outperforming him. Will Smith is almost a point-a-game player, despite missing some time this season. Ryan Leonard is matching him in point production this year, and even Matvei Michkov is nipping at his heels, despite the fact that he's basically been kept in the gulag by Rick Tocchet. This isn't to put all of the blame onto Fantilli. Certainly his development has not been held by having a coach like Dean Avison. God willing, Bones will be able to unlock the potential that saw Fantilli be a top 3 pick. Right now, Columbus needs any sort of spark when looking towards the future. The good news for Columbus is that in the upcoming offseason, they're going to have a lot of cap room to play with and potentially be a big spender. The downside, though, is that they're not exactly flush with draft capital, with only one first and second round pick in this year's draft. As far as expiring contracts they could trade away, there's Captain Boone Jenner, Charlie Coyle, and then the rest is basically depth pieces. The sad unfortunate truth is that the Blue Jackets are probably looking at another big reset/rebuild, because while I think their current roster has a lot of talent, especially on defense, they don't have enough firepower up front to really hang with the big boys in the East. I don't really know if Bowness is the guy who's going to be able to shepherd a long-term rebuild. It's going to be very interesting to see what Don Waddell and the Brain Trust in Columbus do this offseason, but for right now, Columbus residents are pretty much turning their attention back to Buckeye basketball.